Okay. Now this is manual transmission test 3, and everybody got that one in front of you, right? You got something to write with, correct? If there's any matching on this one, we're not going to do it either. I don't like matching. Too much trouble. Anybody got matching questions on their test? You do or you don't? Okay, if you don't worry about it. In a synchro mesh this is manual transmission test 3. Right after this, we're going to do manual transmission test 4. In a synchro mesh transmission, the gears slide into and out of engagement. What does that mean? Do the gears that are pulling the load actually going in and out of engagement with each other in a synchro mesh transmission? Have you looked inside? If Eddie had a Fuller Road Ranger transmission down there, he got one of them semis, and you pull the cover off of it, those things have got great big spur gears that slide in and out of. Now, what does that mean? Derek, you ever drive one of them big trucks that didn't have a synchronized transmission? You better be watching your tachometer, and you better be knowing how to match the speed like you're supposed to before them gears will go in there so you don't grind them. A good truck driver will never grind a gear. But he ain't got no synchronizer. He's got to synchronize it with a tachometer and his gas pedal. Double clutch it. You ever do that on a regular transmission?
Yeah.
You ever operate it without the clutch? You can do it. You can't take off with a flip like that, but you can actually, if you can keep your foot off the clutch if you're smooth about it. You go boom, 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 just go on. And we used to do that all the time, horsing around. You can, if you get good, huh? So that's basically going to be a false one there. Yeah, this is true and false. Manual test 3. You got manual test 3?
Mm-hmm. Manual test 3, but it's ABC.
We got 3C.
Well, 3C. That's the next one.
I got that one.
Yeah, that's the next one. You got to get the one that's right before that one.
Well, I don't know, it's on the wrong test.
Yeah, there's a bunch of more. That's 3 and 3C, the ones we're doing.
We're doing 3 and 3. Hold on.
3 and 3C. Doing any good?
That's it.
You find it?
I got this one right here.
Now you got an extra one? What?
No, that's what it looks like.
Willie lost his manual transmission test 3.
I got it. It's in the manual.
That is, you found it. Alright. In a synchro mesh transmission, the gears do not slide in and out of contact with each other. Somebody answer that next one for me. The number of internal shafts in a manual transmission depends on the number of forward speeds. Is that true or false? That's false. A large gear ratio multiplies torque. Now that's the crazy large gear ratio. How do you define a large gear ratio if you haven't been told that? What they're talking about would be 4 to 1. 4 turns of the engine and 1 turn of the drive shaft. Yeah, you're going to multiply torque that way, aren't you? All right. Think about your 10-speed bicycle, All right, there you go. In low gear, the drive gear has fewer teeth than the driven gear. This increases torque and reduces speed to the drive wheels. Doesn't it? That's what we just said, doesn't it? That's true too. The next one, however, is false. The most torque is needed when the vehicle is moving quickly. No, you don't need a lot of torque when you're driving down the highway. Okay? Huh? What?
You need more torque if you have your foot up.
Yeah, and I have both of my feet planted firmly on the ground. All right, so, and it's going to downshift when you do that, or you are if you're smart. You're going to increase your torque that way. All right, so when the driver shifts the transmission into high gear, engine speed increases. No, engine speed decreases. You've watched that happen. If you see engine speed decrease when you're in high gear, what does that mean?
Torque converter is working.
We're not talking about torque converters, we're talking about manual transmissions. Think about it. What does it mean? That's why I'm putting it in. I'm going, and I put it in high gear, and I go, but the engine is not, the car is not speeding up. What does that mean? Clutch is slipping. Yeah, you experienced that, didn't you? Did you experience that on your Ranger before you put a clutch in it?
Yes.
All right, then. You didn't hurt yourself putting that clutch in it, did you?
Oh, no.
His transmission is really, really noisy. He said somebody ran it out of oil and got it so hot there was smoke coming up out of the gear shift hole.
That's what that thing to do. clutch don't go in the transmission.
No, it's outside. Yeah, but the clutch is actually what, what makes the connection between the engine and transmission. But you did have it slipping though. I mean,
yeah,
yeah.
There's no.
So you had a bevy of symptoms. You had a noisy transmission, but you also had a slipping clutch. What you went after was the slipping clutch.
I was saying that because when you're talking about adding transmission parts, then I really haven't bought any parts for the transmission.
Not really.
Or slave, so.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's all.
so.
Yeah, that's the clutch part itself.
Yeah.
That ain't really a transmission part. So
Right.
you hadn't bought any transmission for it. And that thing, I would drive that son of a gun as long as I could drive it. I mean, if it's making noise, it's making noise. But when it finally goes south, it just gives you another transmission.
I'm gonna pull the bearing out though.
The bearing is probably not all that's wrong with that. If it got that hot, it probably destroyed that input shaft gear and the front part of the cluster gear. So you better off to go online somewhere and find you a transmission and just stab a new one in there, or one that they guarantee. Okay, you can try going to LKQ. You can buy a part for your personal car from them. They got a lot of stuff. A nationwide company. Let me see.
Bridger.
Yeah. All right. The synchronizer sleeve connects the transmission to the shift lever. The synchronizer sleeve connects the transmission to the shift lever. Does it? No. No. Doesn't hardly do that. How does that work? You got that shift rail, which is them little metal rods, and then you got forks, and those forks actually go around those little sleeves. And it's not a direct connection. It's got several things in between. I'll tell you something else that'll happen there. That little fork is aluminum, and it's got some little inserts on it that are plastic. And one day, Eddie had a transmission down there he was working on out of a Ford pickup truck, and the little forks the little stuff that goes, your sleeve kind of looks like this right here, and it's what moves when you put it in gear. All right, it's got everybody seen that? You know what I'm talking about here, right? That sleeve. Okay, the fork actually goes around this, and it's got some little dogs that go in here. This is important, or I wouldn't be telling you this. And that's part of the fork. Now, it actually is going to go, the fork is on the other side where you can't see it. And it's hooked to the shift rail, and I really messed that drawing up. But what I'm saying is these little parts right here are what moves that. That spins in here. Now, if you looked at it from the side, those little things are like this. And then the fork is like that, and then it actually moves. You got me? All right. This one here, these were worn completely off of it. There was nothing there. These were gone. You had this, you had that, and you had the fork. So these weren't even in there. And he could not put it in gear. This would just go past that sleeve. How did they get gone?
Scrubbing the gear?
It was in high gear. No, what happened was, he's one of these big old, guys that, he's going to be Mr. Cool. He's riding down the road, one hand on the red bar steering wheel, his other laying on a gear shifter. And his arm pretty heavy. And it just keep applying pressure until it machined those little suckers off of there. And they were gone. And what we had to do was, you had to get it apart and put another fork in there. And tell him, don't lay your hand on the gear shifter when you're driving the road unless you want a repeat of this. But it was what confused them was it was so beautifully machined. It wasn't broke. It just ground. You can find a lot of aluminum filings in the bottom, but it just ground it right off. Because this was steel and that was aluminum. What's going to lose? The aluminum is. All right, let's go. Let's see. Cable linkage is the most common type of transmission shift linkage. That's false, but there's a lot of that going on the sports cars and stuff like that. And when you got a transmission that's remote and you got to have stuff going to it, cable linkage works well, but it's not common. I mean, it's not as common. On the Escort, you got rods and stuff. Before disassembling the transmission, you ought to inspect each component for damage and wear. That's hogwash. You can't even see the components. Remember what I told you? If you got a transmission somebody brings to you and it's making noise, without driving it, you ain't gonna know what kind of noise it's making, and you'll pull it apart. And you know the gears can be singing up a storm, and you will not be able to see what's wrong with them. You just got to know which gears it's singing in. You got me? So if you got gears, one that's making noise in third or second, and they're saying this thing's got gears that are making noise, but I don't remember which ones, you say, well, put it back in the truck and let me drive it, because I'm not going to go in here and put a bunch of gears in there and we're going to find out that we put the wrong ones in it. You can't look at them. I mean, gears can look really good, and I mean, smooth, pretty, polished, and just whine like a son of a gun. And if you've done a lot of manual transmission work, you get into that. All right, so just remember that. And my daddy would never rebuild a transmission unless he could drive the car. I told you that a couple of weeks ago. Somebody bring one to him, and they say, "Can you rebuild this for me?" And he goes, "I ain't putting a wrench on it until I put it back in the car and drive it." He said, "Because you're going to come back and claim that I didn't fix it when I didn't even have a chance to test drive it when I was done. Furthermore, I don't know what gears are making noise to start with." You know what I'm saying? That's a crazy thing. All right, so the installation process for a transmission is the same as the removal process. It's actually backwards, isn't it? You're going to pull it out or put it back in. That's kind of a dumb question, really. Manual transmission does not do what? Number 11, provide downshifts automatically. That's a no-brainer question, and you're not going to get no automatic downshift out of a manual transmission. An engine's most effective speed range is called its what?
Power band.
Power band. That's where it's nice and high there. Transmission case, number 13, is made of what? Carbon steel? No, usually it's aluminum nowadays. Many minute holes let air through. That's hogwash. Locks in the pressure caused by heat expansion? No. If it did that, it'd blow all the seals. Locates the shafts and bearings in proper alignment. Huh? Yeah, no, other than answer on number 13, it's going to be a dog. D. Yeah. If the drive gear has 12 teeth and the driven gear has 48, Mr. Webb, what is the gear ratio? Drive gear's got 12 teeth and the driven gear has 48. How many times does the drive gear have to turn for the driven gear to turn one time? 4 to 1. You're right, buddy. It's 12 into 48 is 4. There you go. Number 15. Transmission lubricants do not do what? They don't all have the same viscosity. This is crazy, guys. Some some manual transmissions take automatic transmission fluid. Some manual transmissions take 50 weight gear oil. I mean, you can actually, as a matter of fact, you can get 50 weight motor oil and pour in some transmissions, and they're just fine. If you put, and I mentioned this before, but I'm going to say it again, if you put transmission oil in one that is too thick for that transmission, it will clash gears every time you shift. And I was telling you about a little Toyota transmission I pulled apart out of a 72 Corolla, back when there were still 72 Corollas running around everywhere. That's the coolest little transmission in the world. You pull that thing out, it's got a bunch of 12mm bolts around the case. When you pull all them bolts out, you open it up, it's like a suitcase. All them gears just laying right there. That's a pretty little picture. All right, I put some synchronizer rings in there that was busted, all that kind of little brass blocker rings. Put it all back together. I didn't have nothing in the shop at the time when down there at Sabine except for 140 weight gear oil. And I said, well, you know, that ought to do. I mean, we're talking gears here, right? You could not drive that car. Every time you try to put it in gear, it grinds. And I was perceptive enough to know that I had messed up. So what I did was,
I got a question about.
Get out until I'm through.
Huh?
Get out until I'm through. I'll be through in a minute.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Now, this situation here was really crazy, but I drained the fluid out and I put 75W90 in it or whatever, and it was just fine. So I didn't have to go back into it. You know, that was the point. Okay. If you're sure of what you're doing, you won't do that. Now let's finish. Let's get through 3C. All right. Let me stop that. We're going to deal. This is manual transmission test 3C. We're going to identify the letter of choice right here. Transmission gear sets can do all of the following except what can't they do? What can they not do? Number 1. Yeah, you can't transfer torque and leave speed the same, can you? Can you do that?
You need to be stationary.
Can you increase speed and increase torque? Increase speed and increase torque. I mean that's the engine. That's the engine's responsibility, isn't it? Isn't the engine responsible for doing that? So the transmission doesn't need to do that. That's actually B. If you're going to get that right, put a B down there. What must be done in order to get the output gear to rotate in the same direction as the input gear? Number 2. You got to add a third gear. Now think about how your transmission is laid out. Have you added a third gear? Let's talk about this. I know how you guys are thinking. You're thinking, if we don't say anything, maybe he'll shut up and we'll go back out of the shop. Right? You got this? And what if we do the Navy thing, and we do a board exam, and I have a bunch of professional mechanics sit out here while you get up there and answer their questions? Wake up call. Tell me exactly what you have to do in order to make this thing have the output turn as fast as the input. Huh? He's not qualified. Get him out of here.
The same, put a smaller gear in between them.
Well, yes and no. It doesn't have to be a smaller gear. But what did we do on our transmission? We got coming in from the engine. Remember this? You got a bearing here, and you got a helical cut gear right on the end of that shaft. And of course, here's where your clutch splines on here and all that hogwash. You got that? Clutch splines on. Okay. Down here, you got a gear that's big and it sort of matches that one, right? Okay. Now back here, you got a gear that's slightly bigger than that one's in diameter, and it's like that. And down here, I probably ought to be drawing that like that. You got another one down here that's slightly smaller than the one in front of it. Okay, and then let's just say this is a 2-speed transmission and that's your drive shaft, right? Okay, now if I move my slider over so that I've locked this one to that shaft, the power coming in here is going to be going down here, it's going to go up here, it's going to go there, it's going to go out the back. This gear is just one piece. This is just a one-piece gear. It's not going to freewheel nothing. This one right here is basically going to freewheel in relation to that one because that one is a separate shaft than this. It's broke right there behind it, see? So you've added a third gear, technically. This gear is turning, that gear is turning, that's driving, that gear is driving that one. So these would qualify as one gear, so you've added a third gear, and that's how that happens. If, however, on the ones that does reverse, and Daniel, since he had done it, and Webb, you've been involved with that, when you're going to put it in reverse, what do? Huh? You're going to put it in reverse. How does it make it go in the opposite direction when you put it in reverse? Right, you got this one, you got that one, right? Yeah, actually you're just going to add that one right there. Yeah, that we're going to side it. So this one's going to drive that one's going to drive that one. See, the opposite direction, yeah, that's what I'm saying. But anytime this is the cool thing about that. You get somebody you might see a test and they'll say boom, 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 boom. This gear is turning that way. Which way is that gear turning? You may see a question like that. This gear is turning that way. Which way is that gear turning? It's going to reverse every time you add a gear.
It's going to turn this way.
Yeah, right, left, right, left, right, left. That's going to be going the other way. See that? Depending on how many gears you got. You just count your gear. Hear me? That's how you do that. All right. Okay. Now, where are we going here? Let's see. Which of the following is a disadvantage of helical gears? No. What's a helical gear? A helical gear is those cool little gears with the angular cut, and there's more than one tooth in contact every time, right? You got that, so they're not noisy. All right, number 3, they cannot slide in and out of contact with each other. That's a disadvantage. I mean, if they were noisy, that wouldn't be an advantage for sure. But it's not what the problem is. You can't move them in and out, so you got to do it with these synchronizers. Which of the following types of gears used for side gears in a manual transaxle? What are we talking about when we say side gears? What is a side gear? Anybody know what side gears are? Has everybody in here gone brain dead? Where is that thing? Where's that little... I'm going to find something here. This is a little thing I usually use. Here we go. This is from a manual transaxle. I like this because I can hold it in my hand. Okay, what kind of gears are these? Well, they are, but according to your test, this is where your CV axle clicks in. Ring gear bolts to this. Got me? Let me tell you something else, guys, about your ring gear. Everybody pay attention about this. Don't ignore me. These gears are left-hand thread. These bolts I'm talking about. They're left-hand thread. If you take a ring gear off, you got to make doggone sure you know that. Because if you don't know they're left-hand threads, you'll twist one off. And those bolts are not typically hard to get unless you got another rear end somewhere. So anyway, but these little gears here are called spur bevel gears. Right that? They're spur gears, but they're beveled because of the way that they're made. See that? Got a beautiful little picture of that. With that, that's a differential. And the reason that's there is so that the wheels can turn at different speeds when you're driving the car in a circle. You weld those suckers together like the guys that want to go to Holt and race do. That's fine for racing, but when you turn, do all kind of crazy stuff.
How would you weld one together?
Because you want to have positive traction. You want them to both pull at the same time. If you think about this, if you're drag racing, you got a motor that's a real stud that you built, put under here, and you throw all that torque to those rear wheels, what happens? The right rear wheel goes brrr, just boiling its tires. The left one's sitting here like a rubber dummy. All right, if you get on the grass and you're spinning the right wheel because you ain't got no positive traction, but Daddy had a 66 Chevrolet pickup with a straight 6 engine in it, and I got on the grass and I got a little too aggressive trying to get up off of some wet grass, and when I got back up on the road, the rod was knocking, tut, 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 tut. You know, pulled back home and I said, well, I guess I threw a rod out of your truck. He was not pleased, and I had to tear that thing down. Well, anyway, we put a 283 in it, which he was better off anyway, you know. Okay, let's see here. So you got side gears. Side gears are the ones the CV axle slides into, or the axle that's pulling the car does. That's a spur bevel gear. A driving gear has 20 teeth and a turning with 20 foot-pounds of torque. The gear driving it has 100 teeth. How much torque is the driven gear producing? Don't you just love these math questions? But they try to make the numbers easy. If you're turning it with 20 foot-pounds of torque and it's got 20 teeth, the gear it's driving has 100 teeth. What kind of a gear ratio is that, guys?
I can't read that. 5 to 1.
5 to 1. Okay, so how much torque are you going to have coming out if you're putting 20 foot-pounds in? 100 foot-pounds of torque. What you've just discovered is why it is that you can have an engine with only 150 horsepower move a 3,000-pound car. You know, you got to have some gears in there. What type of gear is represented by a gear ratio of 69 to 1? Hmm?
0.69 to 1. That's
I'm sorry. Duh, that was dumb. I said that wrong. Sorry. 0.69 to 1 is what?
Overdrive.
Overdrive, that's right. So you're not turning your engine as fast as your drive shaft. Number 7, to determine the total gear ratio of an entire drive line, you should do what?
Count gears. You're going to take the transmission gearing into play. You have a transfer case maybe. You're going to take the tires into play and the axles.
Well, you're getting close. I mean, he's not. You're not that far off. Forget about the tires right now because we're talking about drive line, not the tires. That's sort of right. But what you do is, okay, what's your gear ratio, Derek? What's your gear ratio usually on a rear end? On a standard, like a rear end under your pickup truck, what is it? You know what gears you got under your pickup? What did you say? 373. Did you special order your truck with them gears, or did they just put them in there? How do you know that's what it's got? I'm just asking. Oh, it comes stock. You must have read up on that thing or something.
No, I just upgraded it.
Upgraded it? Don't you wish you had his money? Okay. No, not really, because then he'd be coming after me to get it back. Okay. 373. Now, what does that mean?
That's opinion. I'm not
C
sure.
point 73 turns of the drive shaft to 1 turn of the wheels. That's what that means, isn't it? 3.73 turns. That's really crazy they got that broke down that much. But the drive shaft turns not quite 4. Now, what happens on your hot rod cars with the stud engine in them and all? You put what, 411s in them or something? Because you want it to be stronger and all that. So anyway, 373 to 1. What is this going to do to your gas mileage? Probably going to shoot it in the foot if you started out with a lower ratio.
Unless you got bigger tires.
Yeah, that helps a little too. So you can go, there's other things you can do. Okay, so I've got this. I got 373 to 1. Okay, that's part of it. Now, I'm taking off in first gear. All right, so that's 4.25 to 1. Actually, I should have made a colon there. Okay, in order to get the gear ratio of the entire drive line, I'm going to multiply that times that. And whatever I come up with is going to be my total drive line gear ratio in first gear only. If you're going to, you got to find out what it is in the other gears. Now, I don't know why you would ever want to do this. I mean, I worked on cars 25 years professionally before I came here to teach, and I never did that out there. I just put back what was there. Or, well, like in my Ford pickup, I dropped some 275s where 332s were, and I doubled my gas mileage one time. But my speedometer was way off. I was going 80 when I thought I was going 60. You know? But anyway, that's how you do it. You multiply that times that. So what is our answer here? You're going to multiply the ratio of the specific gear by the ratio of the differential. And a gear ratio is a term that describes what? The differences in the number of teeth on gears in mesh. Or the amount of turns. Got me? Okay. 9. The main advantages of helical gears are they operate more quietly and are stronger than spur gears. Finally, spur gears are primarily used for reverse in a manual transmission. And that concludes today's test.